Okay, welcome back to the show. As I mentioned, and as we normally have every week, we have Congressman William Keating, our congressman, here live from Washington, giving us a call. Good morning, Congressman. Thanks for giving us a shout.
Good morning, Chris.
How are things down in Washington?
Well, I've been busy the last few days, and we've actually been effective because one of the big bills going through is the Army Corps bill that comes up once a year, and we're very active, and we're getting several amendments passed and included in it. So, your listeners sometimes, in the way Congress is working now, and I do have some decades of legislative experience, the key to being effective is when bills are moving, knowing where to insert it, where you can get some things done, and, because bills aren't passing around here, but major bills are, and you have to be ready to insert those. So we're able to get some things in yesterday. We're going to get some more things in today, I believe, too. So we actually are legislating down here.
Despite the rumors to the contrary, and also it's a Republican-controlled body. However, so it takes a little more finesse for someone as a Democrat to probably get stuff done. It points to bipartisanship that you're able to do it. I know you've gotten something put in for Buzzards Bay. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, this is a win-win situation. Well, I live in Buzzards Bay. I think most of our listeners are on Buzzards Bay, certainly, and it's important to us. Now, a lot of the effort that's being done to improve Buzzards Bay is being done with presentations made to the Army Corps. And what we've found out is we've tried to help some local groups and communities in this regard. There's a lot of work in negotiating, going through some of the areas where things don't conform. So this amendment really will save money. It'll skip a lot of the bureaucracy. What it does is it allows the Army Corps to offer technical assistance to groups coming in with these plans right from the beginning. They weren't allowed to do that before. And so what we're doing is cutting out all the middle here. And the groups, if they're smart, will work with the Army Corps, will request that assistance. And as they're looking for approvals, if there's things that would be roadblocks, they're already ironed out ahead of time. So this will save time, move improvements faster. It's less bureaucracy, and the Army Corps won't be sitting there having to fight these fights over things as they progress. They can have those discussions in the front end. So we're excited about that. It's one of those things that doesn't receive a lot of attention, but it's going to have a lot of effect.
Sure. No, absolutely. I mean, a big chunk of our economy is based around Buzzards Bay, whether people realize it or not. So, Congressman, the other thing locally that you've been working on is, of course, we have this. It's a local issue, but it's really an international issue, which is the cranberry industry and the trade war and the issues that are going on there or may pop up from there. What's happening on the front with cranberries? Well,
it's not a good progress now. They're issuing the European Union are issuing their target. The tariff, let's call it what it is. It's retaliation because of what we did in the first place. And cranberries are among those areas. I think there's a little politics involved. Speaker of the House Paul Ryan is from Wisconsin. That's a big cranberry state. And the same way with Mitch McConnell in Kentucky, they made bourbon, Kentucky bourbon, a target. So they're doing back what was predictable. And this is all a loser's game, let's be honest, because who's going to pay the price for these tariffs? We are. Let me give you an example. I talked to people yesterday, and they're really concerned. People the guy that was working on the house next to mine doing construction was telling me that the wood he's using and some of the, in other jobs, some of the cedar shingles he's putting on, it's up 25 or 30% because of the tariff. Now, the home builders locally really put this on my radar screen early, even before a lot of these talks happen. That's why it's good to have these discussions. And they said the administration was thinking about doing this. And I said, why? And we have to ask ourselves that question again. President Trump has said, well, we have to do it because Canada's got the better advantage over us. Well, the facts, Chris, are just the opposite. If you look at the facts over the last several years, we're getting the better of Canada. So why are we doing this to an ally? And I'll tell you that anyone that's out there, if they're going to do repairs around their house, if they're going to go down to the local stores and look at the price of wood, they're going to see it's escalated enormously. And all these other issues that are going to be problems, we're going to be paying out of our pockets extra money. And when it comes to cranberries, this is an important industry, obviously, for us. And they were in an oversupply situation over the last few years. We worked hard. We used the Export-Import Bank, which is a device to let American businesses go overseas and be able to do business there. That creates jobs here. And part of what we did is work in Europe to establish a market for cranberries. We did the same thing in Asia. And our cranberry growers were able to take their excess supply, which are jobs here in our district, and be able to make profits. And it's also revenues back to the U.S. So this is something that it's harmful. I've reached out to the leaders in Europe, ambassadors and people with the EU that I have personal relationships with and tried to intercede. I'm going to do it again today. But, it's very difficult because we're caught in this bigger issue that, frankly, is not to our advantage.
We're speaking with Congressman Bill Keating, who's our congressman here on South Coast. Is it at all the reason that we're doing this to Canada because they attacked the White House?
Oh, my God. I don't know. I'll tell you. It's
I know that that's not true, folks. I'm just making a joke.
No, well, tell him why. I mean, the president said...
The president said it. Now, we're not sure if he wasn't making a joke
Trudeau.
either. But he said it in his discussion with the head of Canada, which is Trudeau. And we're not sure. I guess you could make the argument, since the British crown is still the Canadian crown, I guess you could make a lengthy argument.
I've never heard that in any history class or tour that's gone through. If you go through a regular White House tour, they will point that out to you. So maybe that's the case. But it's on a serious note, Canada is our ally. They spill blood with us in our wars. They have been a trading partner that we get the better of. And ironically, on this lumber issue, they ship the lumber, but the processing of much of that lumber is done in our country and jobs in our country. So it's hurting in areas of our country as well. And I've got to tell you, the prices are already, marked up, and we're paying for them. And that's just one example of the many things to come. So we have to be smart. A lot of this goes way back to, and a lot of our listeners, even older than us, that know our history firsthand because they were there, they'll see that after World War II, a lot of these agreements came into place. And they were really geared at not just our economy, but on our security, and truly to stem some of that nationalism that we fought 2 world wars over and is springing up today all around the world. And these are things that put us together, hold us together. In fact, I have been active in starting a caucus for free trade agreements with Europe, going just in the other extreme. That's Putin's worst nightmare. Putin has been trying to break up the West. Putin has been trying to get his customs alliance agreements with these European countries. They've done cruel things like the energy-dependent countries in Europe. They've cut off the energy in the winter, so people were freezing. I mean, that's the way Russians do things. And we are playing right into their hands.
We're speaking with Congressman William Keating, who's our congressman here. And Congressman, speaking of Europe and the Russians, I saw that the small country in South America of Colombia, of which I have very close friends from Colombia and who have naturalized here, they live in your district. They're a candidate to join NATO, and I was wondering what your thoughts on that are.
Well, my thoughts are, if you think back just a few years, Colombia was among the most dangerous and violent countries to live in the world. It was ranked that way, and it was causing issues in our Western Hemisphere that way, particularly in drug trade and other issues. And just think for a second of the extraordinary progress and how far we've come here. President Juan Manuel Santos, announcing that they're joining NATO as a global partner. I mean, this is really a phenomenal, in a short period of time, the way we measure things, transformation. And it's an example of the direction we should be taking in these areas. We worked closely with Colombia. The U.S. and Colombia were partners. The violence, it was mediated beyond anyone's even highest hopes. And interestingly enough, a sign of the future maybe, the involvement of women in this whole effort from Colombia was extraordinary too. Some of the real key movers and shakers in this deal and in their success have been women mediating, having a role in the peacemaking process and getting the causes of this unrest. The lack of food, health care, and things, because before this you had a country that was run by someone who was treating their people terribly, and that's an incubator for this kind of activity. The turnaround has been extraordinary. It's a great example of what we can do together, working. If we can do that in a country like that, it's a model that we could use going forward.
It's a beautiful country, and it's nice. It's nice to see it stabilized. Do our European allies, are they encouraged with Colombia joining NATO, or is there any resistance to it?
No, I think the whole point being on the Western Front, the stronger and the more expansive, our partnerships are in these areas, the stronger we are. In North America, we have the ability, I believe, to really economically and with some of our the way we fit in together. Some of the strengths of some of the countries are areas where we could use some help, and they could certainly use our help in so many other areas. We're not taking advantage enough of the possibilities of working. See, in security in this world right now, the military, and this is General Mattis's, Secretary of Defense, Mattis, these are his words. He said the military is there, and his view of the military is there to really give reinforcement to our diplomatic and country-to-country state efforts. That's his view, and I think you're listening to one of the smartest guys that there is, General Mattis. Lucky to have him where we do. And so I mention that because this is the stronger we are in these alliances, the stronger our economies work together, the stronger we will be in our security at home, and the way we are able to influence other countries like China or Russia, or there's a whole bunch of Iran, a lot of countries. We did this with Iran, bringing them to the table, but that gives us strength. There's strength together. So when you see these NATO global partnerships expand, that's good for us back here at home in the U.S.
We're speaking with Congressman Bill Keating, who's our congressman here in southeastern Massachusetts. Congressman, of course, speaking of Central and South America, which I feel never gets enough attention. That's just me personally. It may, but I just feel like it doesn't. We have the little country of Cuba down there. Now, we have been going back and forth with Cuba since the revolution with Fidel. Fidel is out. Now it looks like his brother is at least partially out of command down there. What are your thoughts on our policy towards Cuba? Where is it at?
Well, a lot of people, myself included, were waiting for the Castros to be gone. They have been vicious. Their human rights to their own people, their hatred towards the U.S. has been a real obstacle for moving forward to a country that's so close to us. So I think with them gone, there's an opportunity to start anew, and I hope that's taken advantage of, because they were a real stumbling block. I think there's a better chance now to go forward. Look what's happening in Venezuela right now, and that's something that is so out of control that is that's a threat to the whole Western Hemisphere that way. And then, of course, in Venezuela, there's been problems of drug cartels using it. There's even been Iranian influence reported through Venezuela and back and forth. So we have to make sure in our own backyard that that we're not fighting these kind of battles on fronts in the Western Hemisphere, fronts in Europe, fronts in the Middle East, fronts in Asia. So we have the opportunity to go forward. I'm a little concerned about some of the tweets or the president's rhetoric on this about taking us backward here. We're at a point now where the Castro's gone that we can have a better discussion. We don't want to lose this opportunity as well. And certainly, if we could do, getting back to Colombia, what we have done there, working together, we can do it anywhere in the Western Hemisphere.
We're speaking with Congressman Bill Keating, who, of course, is a ranking member on foreign relations. That's why we like to talk about foreign policy. Plus, we like to go back to the what do we call it when we don't back home on the range?
Yeah, meanwhile back at the ranch.
Meanwhile back at the ranch. That's our segment that we do here because
that's Chris. We could explain that. That's saying with all the people see in these cable shows and all the salacious things and everything else that's going on. There's a lot of substantive things happening that people should be aware of, and one of those, frankly, is something that was brought forth as we're analyzing this tax bill that just went through.
Right.
And one of them really should be corrected is actual marriage penalty. That's something that people weren't aware of, and I'm sure aren't aware of. But we found out that the thing that hurts us most, a lot of the people listening are going to be paying more taxes starting a year from now under the tax bill. So there's a huge cut of $1.5 trillion, which would be $2.3 trillion to pay back, and people in our region, many of them, are going to be paying more taxes. I mean, that's enough to make the top of your head blow off. But one of the reasons is that there's a severe limit on deductions for your property tax and state income tax combined. It limits it to $10,000. So that's our biggest tax deduction. Massachusetts gives more money to Washington than it gets back. One of the greater equalizers was the fact that we could deduct our state income tax and our property tax. Huge deduction for most people. And that now is limited. And if you're married, it's worse because now instead of $10,000 for one person and then not getting a deduction over anything like that, it's joint filing, so it's $10,000 for two people. So you have two people paying state income tax, or two people paying the property tax, and now they're only getting that deduction. So that's not fair for married couples as well. So we're learning as this more information.
Are you breaking news here again, Congressman, with us? Because I don't.
I think that most people aren't aware of this marriage penalty in the tax bill.
I wasn't.
No.
I wasn't. And I think once again,
back and try and correct some of these things, that should be corrected.
We're speaking with Congressman Bill Keating, who's our congressman. Well, Congressman, listen, we won't take up any more of your time. I really appreciate it. I think we did a tour of the world once again, starting here in Buzzards Bay and going all the way to Cuba and Colombia. So,
well, I think it's important, Chris, because the things that are happening there, I'm also on the Homeland Security Committee, as you know.
Right.
So the things that are happening have a direct impact back here at home on our security. So we can no longer just view things in the way they could maybe before World War II or during that era. The world is affecting us day to day, and we better be ready on all fronts. And whether it's someone working in our local cranberry industry, I mean, these things come back and affect us.
Absolutely. Well, Congressman, thank you so much. Have a great day. Good luck. Keep working.
We will. Thank you.
Bye now. So that was Congressman Bill Keating giving us his weekly presentation from down there, and I hope you find that interesting. Doesn't matter if you do or you don't. Actually, I'm just going to keep doing it. But when we talk about some of the world affairs stuff, I think the stuff going on in Cuba, I think the stuff going on in Colombia is important. A couple weeks ago, we asked him about a Social Security thing. But let me tell you this. I didn't come up with those questions myself. Those came from a constituent of the congressman's who I happen to know. But if you have something that you'd like to ask him, have me ask him. And I'm going to ask him. I'm going to filter the thing. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to ask him some crazy question about the Bilderbergs or something like that. But if you have a question if you have a question, I'd love to hear it so that I can pass it along to the congressman. And look, I usually give them a week run up. I don't just throw things at them because this is just technical stuff oftentimes. So while he probably could handle it, I want to get the best possible answer. So I usually email his office, tell him what we're thinking about. So if you have something, you can always email me. You can find my email at the WBSM.com website, or I'll just give it to you. It's Chris.McCarthy@townsquaremedia.com. Chris.McCarthy at townsquaremedia.com. That's how you can email me if you have a question or something that you'd like me to ask the congressman going forward. Tell you what, if you're on hold, I'm going to get to you in a second. I'm just going to take a very quick break here to give you the opportunity to hear from some of our sponsors. Remember, folks, the sponsors are the ones that make WBSM possible here. If you missed the interview or want to hear it again, it will be up live at some point today on WBSM.com. We'll be right back.